I rise to speak as a council member of the Royal Norfolk Show, which is much better than the other ones that have been mentioned. Look, this is a debate about growing the rural economy, and there was so much I wanted to say, but in the 6 minutes I've got, I want to focus on rural governance and really to show how the government's actions are making the country cousins the even poorer relations. Before we start, there isn't even a firm definition of what constitutes rural Britain. Yes, it's the rolling countryside, but are our county towns and market towns part of the scene? No one's really sure, so as part of the prep, I thought I'd create a definition myself. And it's that part of Britain where at 4 a.m. in the morning you can't get an Uber within half an hour after a particularly heavy bender or a night on the tiles. Can't get an Uber late at night? Well, you're in the sticks. That's just how it is. Now, the confirmed city dweller finds these sort of places somewhere to look down on. It's all rather provincial, you see. And that's the problem. How rural Britain is governed by the metropolitan voices ill-serves 70% of the landmass. Even new mayors are to be called metro mayors. And because when the governance and rural voices are marginalised, it makes it harder to champion the rural economy. My lords, there are more councillors within the M25 than in all the county councils of England. It's an extraordinary state of affairs. The metropolitan bias is structurally embedded in our nation. The shires are levelled down to London. It takes just 3,109 electors to elect a councillor in London, but 15,000 in Essex and 18,000 in parts of Kent. With the approach for parliamentary elections, where constituencies must by law be of the same value so everyone has the same weight of voice. By arithmetic, somebody who lives in the shires has about a third and a fifth of the say of the townie. And that's a problem for rural democracy, which is not addressed by the devolution white paper. The closest government has to a rural definition, as my noble friend Lord Gascoigne mentioned, is in the DEFRA Local Authority Districts Rural Urban Classification 2021 dataset, which classifies local council areas as either predominantly rural, rural with some urban, or just urban. And it turns out that the government is going to abolish all the 84 predominantly rural councils. The other 50 urban with significant rural are likely to be abolished with their rurality subsumed into urbanised half-million population units, their local distinctiveness decorated by the detritus of chicken shops. And then, of course, there are the 175 urban, city, London boroughs and metropolitan authorities, mostly controlled by Labour, untouched by abolition if they don't want to ask for it. My lords, I know it's Christmas, but I think we all know that turkeys don't vote for this sort of thing. Labour denies there's a war on the countryside, but these announcements prove there is a war on rural Britain, and the lack of members on the government benches rather proves this point. Labour always secretly wished we all lived in the big cities, but now they get to pretend that we do. For Labour is slashing £110 million from the Rural Delivery Grant. I was grateful for the noble Lord Earl Devon, who isn't in his place, to identify that £10 million of £100 million is going to be taken from that county. Norfolk's not far behind, and North Yorkshire will be £12 million short. We are being short-changed. Rural reorganisation will increase stealth taxes to mayors and a levelling up of council tax on where rural people used to live to pay for their urban neighbours. And with no money, how can the countryside grow? The White Paper promises a new fair funding settlement for what's left of local government. But we all know what that means. Redirecting money from the countryside to their friends in the city, where social problems can be concentrated, but it totally ignores that rural areas where poverty is diffuse. Because it's spread out doesn't make it any easier. In fact, isolation can make it worse, and the additional cost of delivering services in areas where houses can be miles apart is ignored. I could go on, but the point is that short-changing the countryside and diluting its say makes it harder for rural areas to grow in stature and make the economic contributions they should. At least you can say that rural Britain has a resilience, which it needs to, with a government characterised by townies hell-bent on fighting a class war that never really existed. Labour doesn't understand rural Britain, but rural Britain understands Labour. I almost feel sorry for the 90 Labour MPs representing the countryside. They have been abandoned and sacrificed by their party, unforgiven by those who lent them support. My lords, it's not too late to change tack here, but unless there is a change of tack, it'll be difficult to grow the rural economy as part of a united kingdom.